Is your job worth it? Is work worth it? That's what we're talking about today. Hey, everybody, what's up? I'm Dr. Ray, and we're going to talk about if your job is work. When is it worth it? When is it not worth it? When is it worth your life? When is it worth it to do this thing versus when is it not? This is something I've done so much self-reflecting, a topic I've done so much self-reflecting about for 20 years, since I began and thought about what I wanted to do for my career. It's something I counsel students on, undergrads and graduates, all the time. And we talk about what they want to do and how they figure that out and when is it worth it or not. And that's what I'm talking about today. I think about it, especially when I put in some weeks that are like 80 to 100 hours, and then I have like a vacation week, and it's like, you start to think about those kind of things and contemplate it. So let's talk about it. Is your work worth it? So the first thing I'll always say to someone is that, what you choose to do and what your career is always about, what are your goals, what are your priorities, and what is the job? Well, let's talk about all that stuff. So, let's start out with, when is it worth it? When is a job worth it? And then we'll go to when is a job not worth it? And we're going to talk about when is it worth your life, your time, and all that stuff. So when is it worth it? So it's 100% worth it if your job is a hobby that you love. So when it's something you love doing, your hobby, it makes you happy, 100% worth it, because that's awesome, right? Who doesn't want to take I love surfing, that's not my job, but I also love video games, and video games have become my job, which is super cool. So if it's your hobby, that makes it so much better, and it can definitely be worth it then. One of the biggest things that I ask my students when we come upon this question is I say to them, hey, if I were to give you $10 million today, what would you do with your life? And look, all of us would be like, look, I'm going to take a year off and do nothing and just travel and stuff like that. But when you come back from that year, whatever it is, you want to do something. You need to be self-fulfilled, right? We want to do something. We want to have meaning. So what is it you're going to do? Whatever they kind of say, we say, let's figure out how to make a career out of that. That's one way to figure out what you want to do. That's when it becomes worth it. You would still be doing your job if someone gave you $10 million, you wouldn't quit. If I gave you a $10 million check today, you would not just get up and walk out of your office. You would stay there and still work. All right, your job satisfies you. I think it's important that if a job is inflexible, if a job is flexible and you're it's not a big deal if you have to take your kid to the dentist or whatever it happens to be. These are when jobs are worth it, when they can be worth your life. You still have that, and I get that sometimes we have this problem or something we don't like at work, but there's an end in sight to it, like a boss we don't like or a project we don't like. It can be worth it in those times because there's an end in sight. I know sometimes I can take some downtime in the summer or in the winter, over Christmas vacation. So it's okay, so I know it's really stressful. The next 2 weeks are going to be really bad, but then there's downtime after that. So it can make it worth it. And the other thing is the flexibility on your location. No job would be worth it for me if I was away from the ocean because I'm a surfer and I love surfing. So those are times when jobs are worth it. Oh, and they pay you enough to live too. I mean, that's super important, but that's when jobs become worth it. But I think that, the question I'm really getting at with this and really trying to ask is a job worth your youth and worth your friendships and worth your family? And that's where we have to start saying, well, when is it not worth it? Because are you able to maintain and still have all those things while you work? And how much would your life really change if you had that $10 million? So let's talk about that. So first of all, your job's just definitely not worth it if you're just unhappy being there. If you're literally sitting in an office and banging your head against a wall and you can't stand it, or you're doing manual labor that you absolutely despise, whatever it happens to be, then you're in the wrong career. Your job's not worth it. You're just if you're just unhappy there, your job is totally not worth it. I know a lot of people, I read a lot on the certain subreddits and stuff where people are working a significant amount of time to make really awesome pay. but pay is not worth your youth. And I think that's something that I like to talk about. Like, you're only in your 20s one time. You're only in your 30s one time. And now I'm in my 40s and like I'm only here one time. Like, that's it. You got one try at your 20s, like one try at your 30s, like one try at your 40s. And your body, each of those decades goes downhill a bit. Like, I can't perform the same kinds of things I could in my 20s as like in right now, and that I'm 42 years old. Like, when I was 25 years old, I could surf for 8 hours a day every day and not get injured. I could recover. I could stay up all night. I could have all this fun and do all kinds of cool stuff that I can't do now. I can surf for a couple hours and I might get like rotator cuff injuries and stuff that I didn't have, and my recovery is different. So like for me, giving up my youth is 100% not worth it because you only have it one time. I can't like let's take the last 20 years, and I use surfing as an example because it's a sport that like age does stop you at some point. So like if I would have, let's say I would have even worked like all through my 20s and 30s and had this and have like all of a sudden I'll have like 20 million in the bank and I can retire right now at 42. Like, I would have missed out on my whole entire youth of surfing. Those were my best years. Like, I would have missed it. It'd be done. Like, it would be done. And that's a tough pill to swallow for me. And you have to ask yourself if it is for you or not. I usually try to tell people, like, do not give up your 20s or 30s for money. Now, you got to work. It's one thing to have a job, but if you're working like 100 hours a week and you're 25 and that's your life, 6 days a week, 5 to 7 days a week, and maybe not getting vacation, that's tough. I think that's tough on people. But if that makes you happy and you enjoy it, then go for it. And maybe the money's the goal for you. And that's your call, and I totally would support someone doing that. All right. Now, if you're underpaid, your job's not worth it if it's underpaid. It's just not. Now, maybe you're underpaid, but you still have flexible schedule or something that makes it somewhat worthwhile. But like when I say underpaid, I mean like you don't have enough to live. That's a big problem and you need to get out of there. That's when your job is totally not worth it. Yeah. If you want to quit today, like you're just not happy, like you're ready to quit, job not worth it. Like I hear people say like, if I hit the lottery, I would like just I'd get out of there. I'd tell off my boss this and that. Like, you're not happy there. You shouldn't be there now. Let's find something else for you. And I realize it's very difficult sometimes for people to do that, and it's not always reality. But there are always alternatives for people. You can always go move somewhere else and do something different. It is possible to figure out how to do it. I mean, if your job's just taking up too much of your time, there's no time for enjoyment. It's just not worth it. And, another thing about when it's not worth it is when you're living somewhere you don't want to be. Like, I know some people who live where their job is, and then they absolutely hate where they live. They just don't like it, wherever that is. Some people like the beach, which I do. Some people like the mountains. Some people like cities. Some people like the country. But why would you move to a place you don't like at all if you're really not into it? Like, if you love the mountains, why would you find a job somewhere where there's no mountains and stuff? So, or you hate the city, but you're living in a city for your job. Or you want to be in a city, but you're find that career path where you want to be. So those are some basic things that I really reflect on, like when I think a job is worth it or not. But I think we have this mindset in society kind of, at least I see it a lot, that working a lot and working 24/7 is a healthy thing, and it's not healthy. It's not good for us. There needs to be breaks. There needs to be time to reflect and perform. The best performers don't work 24/7. They work and they innovate and they work, and they have times when they work and then they need to do something else, and then they come back to it, the next day. But figuring out those kind of patterns and schedule with your employees and yourself are super, super, super important. And, my big key for people is do not give up your youth for a job. It is just, you can only be 25 one time. You will not get that back. You will never get the athletic ability and physical fitness and everything that your body has again. Like, you can't get that back. It does. You do age. Like, I'm 42. I'm in great shape. I work out all the time, but I know that, like, because I was performing at such, high levels in my 20s, I can tell that I'm not able to do that now because I just can't compete with the same levels of fitness. So, and I look at it from an exercise perspective because my body changes, but you always have to look at it from that kind of perspective because your body ages and you kind of don't know what's going to happen in the future. So, this video is just me reflecting on careers and, when I talk to students and mentor them, I really try to help them figure out what do they want to do with their life. It's always the $1 million question, right? What would you do with $1 million? So $1 million isn't that much, but what would you do with, 10, 20, 30 million? What kind of career would you have? That's where you start to come up with what you should do. All right, y'all. Later.